For this first exercise, we're going to build a time class. The time class will keep track of the hours, minutes, and seconds of a time. We're not going to do anything fancy with this class. It's just a chance to review the mechanics of creating and using a class. So I've already typed in the keyword class and time. So we'll open up the class body right here. First thing we're going to do is declare the private section of the class. And for that, we're going to have three variables: hours, minutes, and seconds. The public section will begin with the constructors that we need. We'll start out with a constructor that has all three parameters, hours, minutes, and seconds included. And then it will very simply set the hours, the minutes, and the seconds. In these constructors, I'm not going to try to check for valid hours, minutes, and seconds just to conserve some time and space. But be aware that in the real world, you would be checking to make sure that, for example, the hours was greater than 0 and less than 24, and that the minutes would be between 1 and 60, those kinds of things. So for the second constructor, we'll have hours and minutes only, no seconds. We're going to set the seconds equal to 0. So we write hours equals h, minutes equals m, and seconds equals 0. For the third constructor, it will be only the minutes, because we could conceivably construct an hours and minutes from just minutes alone. So we'll set hours equal to 0, minutes equal to m, and seconds equal to 0. And then finally, we'll have a default constructor, which simply sets all three variables to 0. And there we go. Now we're ready to write our accessor or setter and getter functions. Let's start out with a set time that will set all three. It will look just like the constructor that sets all three hours, minutes, and seconds. I could copy it, but it's almost as quick because it's so short just to go ahead and type it in. Now we'll do set hours. And we will do a small check here. And we'll write if hours is less than or equal to 23, hours equals h, else. And what we'll do is we'll just set hours equal to 0 if they entered an invalid time. We'll use the same kind of strategy for minutes. If minutes is less than or equal to 59, we don't want to go all the way to 60. Minutes equals m, else minutes equals 0. And then finally, for seconds, same situation. Seconds equals s, else seconds equals 0. Now we need to write some get functions. They will be constant functions. So there's get hours. There's get minutes. And then finally, here's get seconds. All right, so those are the three getters we need. We also want to have a function that displays the time. So we'll write a function called showTime. And it will work like this. If seconds are greater than 0, then write out hours, followed by a colon, followed by the minutes, followed by a colon, followed by the seconds. Else, if seconds is not greater than 0, or if it is equal to 0, then we just want to see out the hours. And the minutes. And that's all. That's one statement, so we can close that off. Now we have a way to set the whole time, set individual pieces of the time, get individual pieces of the time, and show the whole time. Now let's write one function that performs an operation. Let's write an increment function. that will increment minutes by the amount we specify in the parameter. Here we have to check to see if minutes are greater than 59. If they are, then we're going to increment hours by 1 and subtract 60 from minutes, since we've added an extra hour. And that ends the increment function. We can close off the class and we're ready to test. So let's begin first by setting a time with the full constructor and displaying that time. Let's write a new line at the end. Let's build and run. Oh, I see what I did. Simple mistake on all three of these. These should be integer functions. So let's fix that real quick. Build and run. There we go. Notice that the time displays in a 1-digit format for digits less than 10. Normally an output like this might be 0600. The problem is in C++, for that to work, I have to turn the integers into strings, or I have to use something called a stream class to make that work. And using the stream class is beyond the scope of this course, so we're just going to have to stick with the little non-standard format for those. But that worked just fine. Let's exercise the class a little bit more. Let's change the time. Let's set the minutes to something at random, although illegal minutes, and let's copy and paste showtime in Indel. Let's run it again. Okay, now you see it says 6:23. That looks good. And now, as a last test, let's work with the increment function. So what we want to do is, we're going to write a loop that runs 61 times. So it'll go past 1 hour. And it's going to increment the time 1 minute for each time through the loop. So we know what the time is previously to running the loop. Now we want to see what the time will be at the end. So let's copy and paste that code back in. That all looks good. And there we go. So it went 1 hour and 1 minute through the loop. So the new time is 7:24, where the old time was 6:23. So the increment method seems to work. This exercise was just, like I said earlier, a chance to review the mechanics of creating a class. I didn't do everything that we can do with this class. I didn't write an equals method. I could have added more functionality to compare two times or do time calculations to see how much time elapsed between one time object and another time object. And those would certainly be great extensions that you could work on your own. But as I mentioned here, what I wanted to do was just go over the mechanics of how classes are created to make sure that you understand how that works. In my next exercise, we're going to go back a few lessons and pick up the calculator program and create that as a class to demonstrate how much more useful it can be as a class rather than as a set of function calls.